Hey guys, how's it going? Sam here with Paint Splatter Wargaming, and today I'm going to be showing you how to paint your own Neophyte Hybrids for the Genestealer Cult's Army for 40k. I just picked these guys up back in October, and I've been having so much fun with them, but I think you'll really like this. Now, this is sort of a new painting series I'm trying to run, where the purpose here is we want to get our guys looking good. Like, here's an example. We want them looking pretty good to where they're good enough to throw on the table and good enough to look good doing it, but not so good to where you're going to be spending all your time painting. Like, these guys are, there's a pretty decent level of paint on them, and but they're by no means like Golden Demon winners or anything like that, so hopefully this will be a good compromise between speed and quality, and I found that I really like it, and I can get through a lot of guys pretty quickly, so I'm going to sort of show you all how to relatively quickly paint some of these guys just to get them on the tabletop. Now, what's great about this method is that you'll have a whole bunch of guys done up pretty well, and then if later in the future, oh, that's loud, sorry, you decide that you want to go back and sort of touch them up, add some more highlights, well, you can totally do that super easy. So I guess without anything else, let's go ahead and get started on these guys. So for your, before I get started base coating, I made these guys a base spray for my airbrush where I just sort of mixed white and black so I got a color I sort of wanted. But you're going for something basically a Mechanicus standard gray for the Citadel range will give you a really good base coat for what you're looking for. So go ahead and spray that down, and then you're going to take your Steggadon scale green and you're going to start throwing that onto anywhere you see any cloth for these guys. Now, I use a painting technique that I learned from Uncle Adam, who's over on Tabletop Minions. If you haven't checked out his channel, totally do it, because he's amazing. I watch all of his videos. And so I watch him on the treadmill, actually. I try and get some nerd stuff done while running. But give those a look out. But he's got one great video. I'll put a link if I can figure out how to make it work. And this one, where it shows you this technique called you're painting from the inside out. And basically that means you're finding like the lowest, most sort of base points of the model, and you're starting basically at the bottom and then you're working your way out. Now, the theory behind that is what you want to do is you want to start there so that as you're painting up, you're don't have to worry as much about painting over areas that you've already painted. So for example, let's say instead of starting with Steggadon scale green, I started with Mechanicus standard gray and I painted these gray. Well, then when I'm painting these, I can't be messy. But as you can see here, I can be a little messy and, oh no, accidentally get some stuff up there. But since I haven't painted it yet, I'm just going to fix it as I'm applying that layer of base paint. So this is great for batch painting. It saves you a ton of time, and while you should still try and be somewhat careful while you're doing all of this, it really doesn't matter too much. Like, I like to go through and just sort of, honestly, pretty sloppily almost, just go through and just get that primitive base coat down, because you'll be happy it did. So then clean it up as you apply the next layers of base coat. Alright folks, we've let the Steggadon scale green settle pretty well, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through these boots, and we're going to apply a thin layer of Abaddon Black on them. I always thought it was pronounced Abaddon, but Duncan says it Abaddon, and Duncan knows literally everything about anything, so it's another great series. If you haven't watched the Warhammer TV How to Paint series, that's sort of what inspired me to start doing this. They use a whole lot of paints, and they get your guys looking, real professionals. So I thought maybe I could fill a niche by catering to groups of players that maybe want to start off a little easier than all of that. But either way, you can never go wrong with one of Duncan Rhodes' How to Paint videos. He is phenomenal. So now that we're all done with the boots and the little piping up here for the breather unit or whatever that might be, we're going to go into some Leadbelcher on all the metal parts. Now, Leadbelcher is a good thick base, and it does a pretty good job of giving you a nice metallic look that you can work up with some other colors. Alright folks, so for this next part of the model, we're going to move on to our Mechanicus standard gray, and this is really simple. You're just going to find that those pads that you covered in Steggadon scale blue when you're doing your quick base coat for that, or Steggadon scale green, sorry, it's a blue paint, I always get confused. You're going to go through that, and you're going to start throwing down just a super simple little oval shape. Now, what's so nice about this inside-out painting method is that if you've been trying to be careful and not get paint everywhere, you'd have to paint around that, which would have been a big pain with the Steggadon scale. But what's nice about our option is you just paint all the way over it and then touch up afterwards. So go through, and you'll probably want to get 2 layers of paint. It's pretty important that these ovals are gray, because we're going to put a shade on them. However, we're going to be highlighting with lighter grays later that'll really bring it out. Now, since this is one of the last base paints we're going to be putting on, you got to be really careful with this not to get it anywhere else, because it is super obvious if there's just some, if there's like a skin color hitting the back of the model. So be careful with that, and just sort of go with me here, and yeah, so you can really see him starting to come together, starting to look like an actual painted guy. And just get a couple thin layers. This stuff dries really fast, so you don't have to wait very long, especially if you're painting. You don't really have to wait at all if you're painting multiples of these guys, but I'm only painting one for this video. So yeah, keep going. Find all of those bits where there's skin, and just tidy them on up. Make sure you miss the other base coats, and if you make a mistake and get some Cadian Fleshtone over your Steggadon scale green or against your Leadbelcher, just don't worry about it. It's no big deal at all. Just go through and touch it up later. If you can't touch it up during the highlighting phase we're going to be doing later, don't even worry about it. You can just go back and touch it up in an additional phase at the very end for those really stubborn stains that sort of get everywhere. So don't worry about it. This painting method is really intended to let you make mistakes and just sort of patch them up as you're completing the model. So that's why I like it. Alright, so our cultist didn't take long at all to dry from that. Like I said, nice thing about using some watery paints is they dry, or thinned paints, is they dry really quick. So next we're going to add the Mephiston Red. Now you can start with a layer of corn red since this will be the base coat, but I found that even despite it being a layer, actually wait no, it's a base coat, my bad. But despite it being a little brighter, it tends to work pretty well for what I want to do. So, ooh, my brush is getting flayed, but that's alright. I'll fix that here in a sec. So you're going to go through, and for these guys, I like to paint the Dynamite Sticks red, just because, you know, I guess I watched Looney Tunes growing up, and Dynamite's red to me. And then I'll also go through and I'll paint anytime there's like bandanas or any sort of like cult stuff. Like most of them have a little bandana right on their right arm. Go through that and just give that a really, just be careful with it. I'm being a little messy, but like I said, for tabletop quality, it's really fine. Give him a little red thing right there. Then reach over to his left arm, paint that bandana or that wrist thing, whatever that is. I'm not really even sure. Give that a nice red paint job. So now you can really see the model starting to come together. I mean, it's not, there's no shades yet, and the shades are what's really going to bring this thing to like almost done. And if you haven't used shades, one of the biggest mistakes I made when I was in this hobby was not ever using shades when I started painting. I don't know, I thought they weren't worth it. I didn't understand but oh my god, they will change your hobby game night and day. If you're not using shades right now, do it. You need to be using shades. They just basically, a shade is a really thin paint that fills in all the cracks and details, and for this, for the ridges on this armor, that's super important. So definitely try and find some Nuln Oil. Oh, I'm being messy. Look at that. I'm sorry, guys. I'll touch that up here in a bit. But yeah, go through, anytime you see any sort of like lenses or buttons on the environment suit, just paint some red and go through and have fun with it. Sort of do what you want to do, but this is typically about all the red I put on these guys. And our next step will actually be, I'm going to do some cleaning up really quick with some Mechanicus Standard Gray. Got some on his little ledge right here. Alright, y'all, so here's the messy part of painting this. Now, I go pretty crazy with Nuln Oil. People warn me not to, but I just like doing it. And I know it sort of gets some of the details obscured, but I get like, I mean, just huge globs of paint, and I paint it everywhere. Now, some people don't like doing this because they'd rather carefully paint the Nuln Oil into the model, and I understand why they do that, because it's a lot cleaner. However, for my tabletop quality models, I'm really just looking for, I want detail and I want shade everywhere. So you can, if you want to, leave it after this step, but I like to go through and then either dry brush or layer paint some cleanup work onto it, where I go and I'll pick out the raised areas that are sort of above where all the Nuln Oil sort of pulled up, and then I will use that to sort of advance the model, getting it look really good. But sort of that's a trick to get it look a little, it pops a little more, because one thing that all this Nuln Oil I'm putting a lot on, but this is what I typically do, is that it dulls the model down. So I'm not a huge fan of that. It looks fine. Honestly, it looks better than gray plastic, and no one's really going to care if you're playing against them and it's just a bunch of dull models. But if you want them to look a little crisper, a little bit more like the guys on the box, you're going to want to go through and just sort of touch up some of the areas that really should be brighter. And I'll show you how to do that once this shade dries. But as you can see, I'm dripping this stuff all over the place. I mean, this Nuln Oil is going everywhere, but you can really see the, let's see if we can zoom in here. So the ribs on that back part are really starting to pop, and it's going to make it look really good, guys. Just trust me, when we get to the end of this, after cleaning up, it'll look awesome. So yeah, your guy's going to look like this. You can see a lot of the details starting to form, and it's really shiny right now with all the lights I've got on these guys. But trust me, once it's dry, it'll look great. Alright guys, so for the next step on painting this model, we're going to take a sort of dry brushing layer, just because it's quick, of Thunderhawk Blue on all of the different clothy areas. Now, dry brushing is pretty easy, and maybe I'm doing this wrong, but the way I've been doing it is you get your paint, then you go and you get a bit of a dollop on it. That's a nice Duncan word. I've been watching too many of his videos. And then you're just gonna really, you're just gonna really work it in, get it up into the bristles, and then you're gonna lightly drag that over the area. Just sort of flick it, sort of drag it down. Oh, here we go. And it's gonna catch all the raised areas on your model. Just really, just carefully sort of flick it. So now that we've added that, we're going to go through and we're going to add a sort of highlight layer of Mephiston Red. We're going to pick out all the parts on the model that we painted red earlier. We're going to go back and we're just going to highlight those, clean them up a bit. So I just like put a little strip down the middle. Now do try to keep these pretty clean, just because you want to go through and like leave some of the dirty parts on the ends just to fill in those cracks, and it really gives it some depth right there. You can see the stick of dynamite, I've left the Nuln Oil shaded red in between the two sticks, and it really helps it. Then up here, sort of go through, get some of these switches, just touch them up a bit. Basically what we're doing with this layer is we're just brightening stuff up from where we had it originally, and we're going to keep the detail in, so we're going to have to be really careful with this, but we're going to do a nice job of just sort of going around and touching these guys up. Alright, so we've got the red looking nice and good. Next thing we're going to do is do another dry brush layer, but this time we're going to use Mechanicus Standard Gray. Here. Alright. Now for this part of the model, we're just doing a sort of downward stroke on the knee pads. So we're trying to brighten them up a bit, sort of get some gray around the edges of it, but we're also trying to really keep those details there, because we want to be able to see all the the ribbing and whatnot on this model, because it's such a cool model. It's going to look good. So there you have it, sort of gone through. I was a little heavy-handed on that. I might go back and shade it a bit. Just go through here and just sort of touch up some of the other areas. And then on the back, just very lightly, just drag it. Alright, y'all, now that we're done with our Mechanicus Standard Gray highlighting, we're going to take some Celestra Grey, and we're just going to apply it to the shoulder pads. Now, if you're trying to get these guys out quick, you don't even really have to do this. It's just something that I like to do that really makes the model look a little more put together. And it doesn't take very long, so it's another reason I'm a fan of it. And then another thing I'll do sometimes right here to get them looking okay is I'll just take my brush and I'll very gently, I'll sort of highlight a little bit of sort of trim on his chest plate. Alright, also for the next step, we're going to take some Kislev Flesh and we're going to very lightly just dry brush it onto the skin. And might have to do this a couple times, a couple different layers to really build up detail and whatnot. So we want to definitely leave the Cadian Fleshtone and the darker bits that have been colored by the Nuln Oil in the recesses here. So I didn't quite like how the Kislev Flesh looked on this model with just the Nuln Oil. So I think I'm going to go back and I'm going to redo this layer where I'm going to throw some Druchii Violet, and by some I mean quite a lot. Now for one of the last steps of the model, and this is completely optional. I like going through and just adding a couple of details just to give him some character. So I like having this sort of weird little logo or symbol on my guns where I just bring two parallel lines. One will be a nice thick red, and then once that's dried, I'll take another thing of Celestra Grey and put it on next to it, just to give him some sort of look of some sort of military look or some sort of organization for different squads and whatnot. Then another one I like is just going through and making sure that these lenses are nice and touched up. I want to have a nice bright red. Now for a nice added touch, if you want to go through and once again, this is another completely optional step. I'd be going a little bit above tabletop quality, but if you want to add some pop to your models, I like adding some glare on the lenses. So you're just going to put like a small little circle or line of white at the top, and then you're going to follow that up with a small line of what I think I usually use Troll Slayer Orange for mine. Just very carefully. So, my mistake, it's actually Fire Dragon Bright is the shade we use for this, but just going through and just very carefully adding just a bit on the bottom of the lens, just to give it sort of that realistic lens-like appearance, like there's light coming off of it. Just give it some nice lenses. And then if you go too thick, like I just did here, you can touch it up pretty easily. Just go back and get your Mephiston Red and just use that Mephiston Red to sort of refill in that area right in the middle. So you want a nice big red thing, a red blob right in the middle for you right there. Alright, one more step you can go through if you want some extra added character to your models is going through and finding those Genestealer icons and painting them a nice gold color just to add some pop. It'll pop well with the blue. You can leave the chain silver just to give them some sort of more, some added depth to the models. Going through and just getting that nice iconography painted up gold. Alright guys, well that basically sums it up for my Genestealer Colt Neophyte Hybrid tutorial. I had a lot of fun with it. I've never done these tutorials before and I've really enjoyed it, so I hope I get to make some more in the future. Yeah, so obviously the painting quality isn't the highest, but I think it's a nice compromise. Sort of if you want to paint like lots of guys and have them looking decent for your buddies on the tabletop, but maybe not something you'd enter into a painting competition. So I know I've got about another 90 of these guys to paint up, and I'm definitely going to be painting them up similar way to the one I did in this video. But yeah, if y'all have any questions, comments, or critiques, like leave them in the comments for me. I'd love to see them. If you have any other sort of painting stuff you'd like to see me try, like if you have a model you're not really sure about how to simplify the painting scheme down, you know, ask for it. Maybe I can do a video for it. I'll definitely do my best, and I hope this channel takes off, and I'm really excited to see where we go with this. I've got some buddies with me that'll start doing some battle reports, hopefully, with some of our painted stuff, and we're going to have everything from tutorial videos on how to make terrain, to paint models, to build lots of your own custom gaming boards and whatnot. So we've had a lot of fun with it over the years, and I think we're really excited to get a channel going. So we hope y'all stick around, and either way, thanks for watching. If you want to, subscribe. You can see when our new stuff's coming out, or leave us a like. We'd really appreciate it.